Going to say hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Marcia O'Hara. I'm going to be leading the meeting with Vicki Nelson today. Diane can't be here because she has a medical test to take. She's fine, but they could only do it this afternoon. So she asked us to do it. Please, my apologies if I stumble over anything. I'm doing my best. I'm with it. But anyways, today we have the wonderful Dr. PMH Atwater speaking for us. Again, I don't know, maybe you've been lucky enough to see her. She's spoken to us a couple times at least. And next month we have Virginia Jablowski coming. She's an animal intuitive healer and communicator. So that should be interesting. And I'm going to talk a little bit about PMH. And if you forgive me, I'm just going to read a few things here. You were born in Twin Falls, Idaho. You're a mother of three. She was a Sunday school teacher, secretary, and a prize-winning cook. And then a handwriting analysis in the mid-60s led to you redirecting your career and lifestyle change. And you directed into public service, project development, and analysis. Okay. And paralleling this change, she began intensive research into paranormal and altered states of consciousness. She has a professional background in hypnotic past life regressions, sensitivity work, de-haunting houses. That sounds really great. We'll have to hear about that. And mediumship. She came to specialize in aura massage, astrology, numerology, dream and symbol interpretation, rune casting, divinatory and earth energy sensing. And then in 1970, and then in 1977, she had some severe health traumas that resulted in death and near-death experiences. She had 3 times in 3 months. So just amazing, amazing lady. And the following year, she tried to understand what was happening to her and tried to seek out and interview other near-death experiencers. She's one of the original researchers in the fields of near-death study. She's internationally known. She began her work in 1978 as a pioneer in subjects like near-death experience, the after effects of spiritual experiences, transformations of consciousness, reality shifts, future memory, and modern generations of children and how they differ from previous generations. And we were just talking about that. So that's kind of neat. She has done 44 years of intensive research. Her dad was a cop, and she said she grew up in a cop station, and she learned how to do research, and she applied those principles to the work that she's done today. She has authored 19 books so far, and there's a new one that is on the way. She also, with the help of David Morgan, she produced the world's first compendium of the entire near-death phenomenon. It's entitled The Complete Idiot's Guide to the Near-Death Experience, and it was debuted in 2000, April 2000.
And it went defunct. And it went defunct.
It's
now called the Big Book of Near-Death Experiences.
Okay, all right, great. I was just going to say that you're an international authority on near-death states. She served on many boards. She has a doctorate from the International College of Spiritual and Psychic Studies in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. She has an honorary PhD in therapeutic counseling. She has presented for us. She's presented for the national IANDS, and they presented her with an Outstanding Service Award, and the National Association of Transpersonal Hypnotherapists awarded her a Lifetime Achievement Award. So you're an amazing lady. Your credentials are just unbelievable. She has been written up in medical journals. She's been in numerous magazines, newspapers, and on many TV shows such as Sally Jesse Raphael, Larry King Live, Regis and Kathy, Entertainment Tonight, Geraldo, so forth and so on. So we are so pleased. And today, PMH is going to talk to us about her experiences during 9/11. She helped some of the people that had passed. She can tell you more about it, but from what I understand, you helped rescue some of the souls that were going through the trauma there and helped to direct them. I don't know if it's to the other side or to let them know what was happening. So we're very excited to have you. And I just wanted to mention one more thing. We're meeting at Evanston Hospital before we've done our online presentations. And we were charging, I think it was $20 or whatever you can afford. We are still incurring expenses, even though we're online. We have a lot of fees we have to pay, and we'd appreciate if any donations that could come to us. You can go on to our Chicago IANDS website at chicagoiands.org and go to donate, and it will direct you either to pay by Zelle or give you a written address to send to. Trying to think, Vicki, is there anything else you have to add to that?
It's great. I know you have music for meditation.
Yes, I know Diane usually does a meditation, and I'm not a musician, so I'm just going to get us ready for a little meditation using a recorded excerpt of Diane's music. So welcome again, everyone, and if you can just get comfortable in your seat. Take a few deep, slow breaths. You're comfortable, you can close your eyes. And I'd like to also put out the intention of just sending love and peace out to the world in high vibrational energy. And here we go. Okay, thank you. I'd like everyone to start coming back. Try and feel your body against the chair. Take some relaxing breaths. And let divine light and energy flow around you and through you. Thank you. Okay, I am going to give the meeting over to Dr. PMH Atwater. We're very excited, and thanks again for being here. Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. It's such a thrill for me. Please know, excuse me, that anything I'm about to say comes from a little book I wrote that is called, let's see, it is called The Challenge of September 11, a Memorial. And you can get a copy of this free of charge on my website if you want it, www.pmhatwater.com. So you can easily get a hold of this. So I'm going to go through it as best I can. Please know that I was in the hospital the first 3 days of this week. I was busy dying. And the doctors thought I'd had a stroke. And I said, no, 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 I didn't have a stroke. And after many tests, they found out, no, I didn't have a stroke. In fact, the heart medicine I was taking was literally killing me. So, yeah, surprise, surprise. So naturally, they took me off that heart medicine. So I'm here being a little different, but I'll do the best I can to be quote unquote fully normal and give you a good talk. What I want to share with you is what happened on 9/11 for me. The day before, so we're talking September, the actual day before, I was in North Carolina giving a talk. And that night it was storming and raining and being very nasty. And I just knew I had to get home. So I became part of a particular flight that went through the storm, a little plane, but we went through the storm and arrived back in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I live. And I went to bed in my own bed that night with my husband. Oh, this is so good. And the next morning, one of my daughters called me on the phone. She says, Mom, 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 get on the television right now. So I went downstairs, turned the TV on, and a plane had gone into the first of the two towers. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. So I steadied myself at the big chair next to the TV, and I left my body. I went to New York City. I was there. Let's see, the buildings were right here, and I was to the right of them in my own view. And I was high enough that I could see what had happened to the first building and the plane that went in. And I could see all of this looked like paper that was falling in the air. And I couldn't figure out, what is all this large sheets of paper falling in the air? And I looked and looked and closer and closer. And that wasn't paper, that was people. They were jumping out of the windows of that tower. And it was my decision to be there in prayer, to do everything I could to help these people go through the transition, go through the death spiral. Now, my husband and I physically live 2 hours from the Pentagon. So we're not very far away. And I was very much aware then that something bigger was going to happen. So I stayed there, still wanting to help heal and help in any way I could what was going on. So I got a little closer to the building. And as I did, the second plane then headed for the second building. And I saw it hit. And instantly I was inside that plane. There were 3 Muslim men in there. One at the controls. He was very hard in the sense of his mind made up. He was just doing what he was going to do. he was dedicated to doing this. So he's very hard and fixed. The other two were kind of outside the door of the cockpit. And one of them, they were younger. And one of them did not know what was going on. He just sort of went along because he was supposed to go along, but he didn't fully understand the purpose. And he was just terrified. And the third one, he was there because he wanted to be part of this scene, to do what he could for his country, and for you know, what their purpose was in being there. But when the fireball came, and I saw that fireball come into the cockpit and into the middle of where they were and where I was looking at them, that was too much for him. So those two really were younger than the man at the cockpit, and they were not fully committed like the man at the cockpit, and they were terrified at that fireball that was headed for them. And of course, they became part of that fire and were burnt up. And then I pulled away from the plane, and of course, more of the people were falling. I mean, they were everywhere, and it was you know, I was so dedicated to helping in whatever way I could, that no other emotion mattered. So I was really, and I became aware that there were actually 4 planes. There was another plane that hit the Pentagon. There was another plane that was going to circle back toward the DC area and was felled by people on the plane and crashed at a field. I believe it was in Pennsylvania. and I became so much a part of what was going on there, and doing everything that I could to help. Let's see. There were so many, in fact, that I really couldn't separate the souls from the dying. I mean, there were bodies that were dying, but there were souls that were not, that they were no longer a part of their body. It was just a soul. The body was gone. And there for a while, I became a little confused as to which was which and who was who, and how do I help. But you know, that word, that prayer, God help me, use me. I did everything I could. Pardon me as I every once in a while check with my book here, and because I want to be right on. You know, prayer is so powerful, and I just did everything I could to help them. And then there were just so many people dropping as if they were, I mean, it really looked like paper. It looked like huge pieces of paper flying everywhere. And when you got closer to them, you realized those were bodies. So I was there, I don't know how long, hours maybe. And then finally came back and revitalized my body. And was very much in prayer off and on that day. And my husband works for the Red Cross, and his job is to set up blood drives. So he was on call. He left, he was on call. So we were very much a part of that drama where we lived, and calling people forward, bringing, you know, as it turned out later on, they really didn't need that much blood because there weren't that many survivors. But we didn't know that at the time. And so we were doing everything we could to set up blood drives. The next day, so we're talking September 12, I went back to that area. And what I want to say, I saw lots of spirit forms. I entered that state where the inner planes of the spirit realms are fully visible. I define the inner planes, by the way, as that dimension, that vibrational frequency, wherein lies the untarnished soul, our higher self, and the reality of God's greater plan for humanity. Other levels of spirit are also there. I was surprised to observe the departing souls forming a huge oscillating wave, the shape of a hand, stretching upward. Really? The souls that were there were beginning to form an oscillating hand, one big giant hand in the air. Here's this oscillating hand. And it's just, I looked at that hand and it's just, wow, that this was occurring. The souls of the dead no longer needed emergency assistance. It was just, I was there in prayer to do anything and everything I could, but it was as if they knew what they were doing. They weren't bodies, they were souls. The bodies had long since dropped or burnt up. These were souls. I had seen up close the faces of the three of the terrorists in that plane. I've already talked about those three men. Now I want to talk about the next day when I went back and saw this hand. I mean, what's going on here? And it was as if a soul wave was forming. And I want to describe that these departed souls came together and formed a soul wave, the shape of a giant hand stretching upward high into the sky. So imagine, if you will, oscillation. These souls were oscillating. They weren't standing still. Well, of course they weren't standing. They weren't being still. They were oscillating. And they were forming this incredible hand with the fingers stretched upward into the sky. Before I could think, the soul wave and I merged. what I witnessed, what I came to know while inside the wave, transcended my childhood memories of World War II. I was part of Pearl Harbor in the sense that it happened during my watch as I was walking to school. And I was very much a part of that in the sense that I was terrorized by Pearl Harbor. So all of this brought back those memories of my childhood. Each soul was totally conscious and totally possessed of knowing. I think that's significant. Every soul in that wave, every one of them, was possessed of consciousness, and they knew what they were doing. And so I just kept watching this. I was part of it, but yet, you know, it's like there was a previous soul agreement, literally a previous soul agreement, that none of us can go on living the way we have in the past in our society. It's like the United States of America. Wake up. You cannot go on living the way you are, having the politics you have, and doing things the way you have year after year. The Democrats and the Republicans and all of this stuff, you have to stop and look again. And that's what the soul wave was doing. Let's see. Each person involved in the tragedy, regardless of who, victim or perpetrator, had agreed before their birth. Let that run through. They had agreed before they were ever born to be part of this event, to be there at that location, that time, as that person. They had not committed as souls to be killed or to kill necessarily, but rather to be present and accounted for, to ensure that the energy needed for the emergency to occur and have the effect it did would be available. It was only as time neared that final decision, that final contact, that is to say, who would do what. So they didn't decide who would die or who would live, who would be here or who would be there. Their decision before birth was to be there, in energy, in form, in body, to be there. So they were there, present and accounted for. It was only as time neared that the final decisions were made for the various outcomes. I think that's significant. That is to say, who would do what. It was their purpose as souls to create the great wake-up call. So thousands of souls were involved here. That great wake-up call. One so horrendous that it would shake up the entire earth plane, affecting every government, every religion, every man, woman, and child, and the environment. I came to understand in a previously arranged soul agreement, the people who died or who were injured in the attack had offered to sacrifice themselves in order to make the statement that none of us can go on living the way we have in the past. That just, that just got me. I saw the attack on America would not be the only incident of such drastic nature to occur. There will be many shocks, as many shocks as it takes to ensure that no one misses the point that in order to awaken, we must be willing to rethink the values that drive our behavior. Now, I came, what first caught my attention about all of this was a barrage of similar messages that actually began on July 5. You know, we're talking about September 11. On July 5. So that's long before. People were having dreams that this was going to happen. Maybe some of you in the audience remember that. People were having dreams that this was going to happen. People, myself included, suddenly became seriously ill from unusual bouts of flu, throat problems, heart and lung distress. A level of frustration, almost like a low-pitched anger, was apparent everywhere I turned, no matter who I spoke with. Even on September 6th, you know, that's before September 11th, September 6th, people were having incredible dreams. Remember the Arabs back, was it Osama bin Laden, were very concerned that people all over the world were getting these dreams and visions that this was going to happen because they thought people would catch on and they would know what was coming and why. But no, us silly Americans and silly people everywhere just kind of tossed it off as silly dreams people were having and don't pay any attention to that. Osama bin Laden and his group paid real attention to that. But on September 6th, there were vivid dreams happening. I mean, almost to the point. And still people were, you know, scuffing it off and passing it by. Just even Brad Steiger, it was a very good personal friend of mine. He started talking about it, and scientists, here, you're going to love this. Scientists Dean Radin and Roger Nelson had been conducting a fascinating research project at Princeton with random generators. Prior to the horrible events of 9/11, get this, the random generators indicated that global consciousness had reacted significantly several hours prior to the attack. I'm going to read that again. I want you all to be aware of consciousness. The consciousness of the people involved had already committed to be there. Didn't matter what happened to them, whether they died or lived, they had agreed to be a part of this before they were born. Okay, now we're talking about global consciousness. We're talking about scientists, Dean Radin and Roger Nelson, and they were doing that fascinating research with random generators. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. And they found several hours before the attacks, people globally, we're not talking United States, people globally were catching on and being frightened and knew what was coming. People globally, several hours before the attacks, people globally knew. Okay, so the next day after that, I went back again. So this is the third day. I went back again. I was shown that the charge giving to the souls, who and what we really are, our higher self, our greater identity, the soul, is to fulfill the priority that undergirds and sometimes overrides individual destinies. As a personality, we can plan, choose, learn, grow, experience, experiment, enjoy or suffer, react or respond as our instincts and preferences urge us or direct us. But in actuality, it is the greater plan that is always served. Agreements to participate in given scenarios are made on the soul level before taking on a personality with birth and flesh and bone. That's why a religious or spiritual commitment in life is so important. By making such a commitment, we empower ourselves. Get this. We empower ourselves to remember what we already know. So we can be more aware and live more responsibly. The soul's will fulfills God's will. Now, there's a little more I want to give you here. Let's see. Since I thus saw the souls who were killed coming together in that soul wave, while I was at ground zero in spirit form, I knew another agenda was involved besides that of terrorism. My suspicions were confirmed when I merged with the soul wave and learned that an appointment with destiny had occurred. The will of the soul had intervened in service to a greater plan. But it wasn't until a few weeks later that I felt troubled by a sense that I had missed something, that there was an additional energy component present. So immediately I went back in spirit form to ground zero. What I saw validated this. There were still hundreds of souls at ground zero, hundreds of them. Some as ghostly apparitions and imprints were hardly more than psychic residue. A few were souls drawn out of the soul wave and back to the disaster scene by strong emotional ties and commitments. Yet by far the largest number were displaced. These souls had died elsewhere and were not part of the event. In other words, they were pulled in. They were not part of 9/11. They were pulled in from elsewhere. it died elsewhere, but were pulled in. Because the blast that had ripped apart the World Trade Center buildings was so powerful. Get this, this is what I saw. A temporary hole in the fabric of time and space, creating the energy necessary to form the vortex. And in other words, this event was so powerful, it tore a hole in the fabric of time and space. But the sucking action that resulted pulled in many of those who were making their transition from body to spirit as at locations that were miles away, even hundreds of miles away. These stragglers were picked up by various psychics and mediums. So there was a lot going on here. So what's going on? I learned during my near-death experiences that the soul can assert its will in ways unique to its own purposes. We sense this in acts and incidents which seem somehow fated or destiny, or at least beyond the scope of what we as individuals can readily accept or understand. There's something else going on here. What decides who goes where? It's vibrational resonance. What decides vibrational resonance? I was shown that it is each person's attitudes, perceptions, and feelings, particular his or her state of consciousness at death, as well as whatever exists within the deeper reaches of the subconscious. Seldom are any of us aware of this deeper part of our being. Yet this reservoir of emotion and thought often holds the deciding factor in what happens to us after we die. The most oft repeated phrase offered by the thousands of near-death experiencers in my research. I've been researching this for 44 years, folks. My research base is nearly 5,000 adults and child experiencers. The most oft repeated phrase offered by the thousands of near-death experiencers in my research base is, always there is life. Always. That means after death, before birth, always there is life. We do not die when we die. We don't. We shift frequencies of vibration and go someplace else. What I saw with 9/11 let's see. Can I see it? What I saw with 9/11 after the many days I spent there is that rip in the fabric of time and space enabled a lot of pain throughout the world for years. to finally be healed, to finally come together in such a way that there could be, that it could come out, that it could come out in such a way that it could be faced and it could be healed. So that 9/11 really was a gigantic healing wave. And that hand continued to be there for at least 3 days that I know of. And various psychics and mediums kept picking up this and that of those souls that were still around, but realized a lot of those souls that were still around had died elsewhere and came in, bringing more power to the event, more and more and more power. And this was 9/11 was a gigantic opportunity for healing. For beings that had occurred for decades, for years and years and years and decades. It enabled a lot of healing to occur. So it was an incredible event. And I know all of you who are aware of 9/11, afterward, there wasn't hardly any crime anywhere, remember? I mean, especially in New York. There just wasn't hardly any crime anywhere in the United States or in New York. People just cool it. I mean, we don't want to do this. We want to help our country. And there was such a call forward for people wanting to help people and to, people came together, not only in the United States, but throughout the world, people wanting to help us. It was just an incredible thing that happened, the healing afterward. And for myself, a year later, I was in Istanbul, Turkey. I was giving some talks there on near-death experiences and that kind of thing. And so I was in Istanbul, Turkey. And a woman there, she was a school teacher. She taught, I think it was like 6th grade, maybe. And they were all Muslim. And she was a Muslim, teaching Muslim kids, bunches of them. And the kids in her class were so traumatized by 9/11. Now, these are people in Istanbul, Turkey, not the United States. The kids in her class were so traumatized by 9/11 because it was Muslim men who had committed the event. And they were in tears. These were Muslim men who had done this. And it just crushed these kids. And that teacher found my book, The Challenge of September 11, a memorial. She found it on the web and went right to my website, downloaded it, and was so gratified by this book that she downloaded a copy of that book for every kid in her class. And she wanted to tell me that the kids in her class reading that book, the material in that book had saved her kids. That they knew purpose and they knew reason, and it made sense to them, and they could find peace in reading that book. And I was so overcome because I just wrote that book as a memorial and put it on my website, thinking, whoever might read it, but I needed to vent. I needed to let go. I never thought that Muslim children halfway across the world could read that and be healed. Yeah, that was, I mean, I just stood there and cried. I still kind of cry today because who knows, the impact of what we do, what we think and say and what we do. And halfway around the world, these Muslim kids were healed by what I wrote. Wow. Well, I think that's my 9/11 story. Ever since I died, well, even before I died, I could do out-of-body traveling. I had learned, well, I knew it automatically, but I had learned more techniques long before I ever died. And I was teaching it. I was teaching out-of-body traveling. And then when I died, to me, it's not out-of-body traveling anymore. It's just being there. I put my mind there and I'm there. In detail. So my consciousness, of course, obviously it's changed radically. Yes, it has. I was raped and became pregnant, and it was because of, and miscarrying is because of that drama that I had, my 3 near-death experiences. The first one was January 4, 1977. The next one, no, January 2, and then January 4. And then the third one was March 29. So I had 3 in 3 months. And later I had 3 relapses. So after my experiences, I had to relearn how to stand, how to walk, how to think, how to hear, how to see properly, how to crawl. I began again, all over again. My story, I mean, nobody knows my full story. They don't. They only know what's happened to me since I died. You don't know before. As a 5-year-old, I was 5 years old when I did my first double-blind study with a, research group. Well, anyway, I've always been tearing my world apart. I was born with dyslexia and synesthesia. I mean, in those days, what school teacher ever heard of dyslexia? Not very many. What school teacher even today knows about synesthesia, which is multiple senses? So my first grade, excuse me, I was the only kid in school who could smell color, see music, and talk to numbers and letters. And I mean my sensory organisms were just totally different. See music and hear numbers and smell. Well, anyway. So my walk to school every morning in Twin Falls, Idaho, walking to school every morning is Pearl Harbor. And in those days, the government gave, the families who lost somebody in the war effort, this big, huge gold star decal. I mean, it was a big thing that they'd put on their living room window that would say that, someone in their family died in the war effort. So my walk to school was a death walk. I walked death every morning. And this one morning, I'll never forget it. There were 6 new gold stars overnight in that person's window. And I stood there and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I cannot remember one single morning in all of my first grade when I didn't have to stop my sobs and shudders just to walk in the door of my classroom. I was a different kind of kid. A different kind of world. Well, my new book, I'm going to give you the title of my new book. Yeah, I don't have a publisher yet. Let's all pray for a publisher. But the title of my new book is Edges. Near-death experiences as you've never seen them before. The life, deaths, and research of PMH Atwater. And I guarantee you, that book will be nothing else like you've ever read before. Okay, I'm through. Bye.
PMH, we have a couple questions in the chat. First of all, Alma writes that she thanks you for acknowledging the vivid dreams before 9/11, and she was one of those people that had those dreams.
Yeah, Alma. I remember Alma. Yes, I would expect that of her. She's very sensitive.
And Sarah writes, I have read and believe that consciousness is ambient and that we are just receivers like radios. Do you have anything to comment about that?
Well, we are receivers. That's true. But we're also part of that process. So we are receivers, but we are also senders. And we are also part of the entire process. We are not just automatons. We are very much involved on all levels with what's going on. Unfortunately, most of us don't know that. Oh, I mean, we go along as if we were blind, not realizing how powerful we are. That's one of the things about near-death experiences is it wakes you up. And you realize, ooh, hey, there's more going on in this world than I thought there was. And I'm able to connect with more of this world than I thought I could ever do. So please read my books. I talk a lot about After Effects. And if you want, get on my website, www.pmhatwater.com. On the front page is a section called NDE After Effects. Go in there. I call it first aid for experiencers. A lot of first aid stuff is in there.
Grace writes, 9/11 was the event chosen for the ego shadow to be exposed and brought to the head. We as people needed to understand that the shadow is in its own entity and has greatest in assisting the awakening and healing of this planet. And she says it's from the Creator Speaks.
I agree 100% that 9/11 was indeed part of a greater plan. Remember that wave, that oscillating wave that the souls formed, that enabled a lot of healing to occur on the earth plane. Yes.
Kathleen would like to know, how does the current conflict in Ukraine parallel with what you are saying to reawake the wake up?
Ooh, I talk about that a little bit in my book. It was, what was it, 12 years ago. I was in Russia. And I was standing at the foot of one of Stalin's great architectural masterpieces. And it was on a high bluff. And I could look down and see the river, and over there was Moscow, and over here was their financial center. And I was saying to myself, within my mind, I was just so glad Stalin was gone, finally gone. And I heard this very clear voice to my right, as if someone was standing there. And it said, and I quote, "Stalin is back. His name is Putin." And I didn't quite know what that meant at the time. And I looked around for somebody, and I couldn't find anybody there. But yeah, but when all this stuff was going on with Ukraine, it just hit me. Yes, Stalin is back. His name is Putin. It could go into a World War III. That is very possible, especially with China involved. And China is kind of involved. And the stupid mistakes that everybody is making all over the globe, it's really hard for those of us who have a greater vision or an open mind to realize that in Russia right now, 83% of the people think that what Putin did was absolutely the right thing to do. And that people in India, which is a democracy, and various other countries are supporting Russia. And I'm going, what? So Putin is doing a very good job of lying, but also there's something else going on here that we won't know the full import of that for for probably a year or two. We're only seeing the beginning. There's a lot of forces going on. Also in the other levels, as well as the physical level. There's a lot going on here. And I looked at Putin's chart. Yes, I'm an astrologer. I'm not an astrologer like I used to be. Not at all. I used to be a mechanic or an engineer in the way I did astrology. Now it's very, very different. And Putin is being challenged as he's never been challenged before. And he's really on a downslide. Now it looks like he's on an upslide, but he's really on a downslide. So we'll see where all this goes. You know, I don't know where it's going to go, but it could be for me bookends. Bookends in the sense that I came in with World War II. I may be going out with World War III. Bookends. And that may happen. In the meantime, I'm going to do everything I can to be a clear thinker and to bring joy into life. Yes.
Greg writes, it appears that it's a very similar question. In the similar place we currently were on 9/11. By that, I mean that the planet is globally in crisis and the shadow, dark side, has reached a level, reached a level that can't be ignored, thus must be addressed. What have you been shown regarding what we are experiencing and where we are going?
Well, I urge everyone to get a hold of that talk I gave at the Walter Russell Museum. I think it was a couple of months ago now. You can get on my website and get the link. It's free. It'd be nice if you donate something to the museum, but it is free. Where I'm talking about the various different aspects and cycles that we are now going through. Life will never be the same again, so forget about that. Not gonna happen. We are moving through a whole new cycle. And I talk about that and I give dates for now, next year. And the year, I think the year after that, I go through several years where I give you an opportunity to see what's building and what's going on. There's a number of critical dates this year, next year. The first of those dates was when Putin invaded Ukraine. We are going to have another of those critical dates this year, the last day of the month. And then there's a number of dates after that. So get a hold of that talk. It's kind of silly at times, but you know, I give you the various cycles that we're moving through, and it gives you a chance to deal with that. So how do we handle this? Know thyself. The greatest of all axioms ever given. Know thyself. The more you live and breathe who you really are, the more protected and guided you are. Know thyself. I gave a number of things you can do. One of them to help you better handle your own body, your own life, is to learn the magic of just touching your thumb to your index finger with the other fingers out. Just that brings all your air into balance and enables you to breathe easily and effortlessly and fully. You don't have to do it all the time, but doing it every once in a while will bring you into balance. When you are in balance, you can think easily and properly. Your life runs on a more of an even keel because you are on more of an even keel. There are simple things you can do. I wrote the book, A Manual for Developing Humans. Way back, thousands of years ago, maybe, the word for God, the sound of God was Hu. Hu was God. So human was God man, God woman. It's literal. Human. Most near-death experiencers come back realizing they are co-creators with the Creator. So, if we then do these simple things, you know, with near-death experiencers, I say the first thing you need to know and need to do first is to learn how to think and learn how to speak. And in the manual, the first chapters are on how to think and how to speak. Relearning language is just definitely part of the after effects. You need to relearn language. You need to relearn who you are, breathing, speaking, standing. Learn that. Do that. And your life will be so much more pleasant, or at least decisions will be easier to make. So I recommend that.
Moya watched a program on a child who was having the 9/11 memories in his current incarnation. Have you ever heard of PMH, any cases of 9/11 victims reincarnating, and what would be the purpose, if any, of those memories?
Sure they're coming back. You bet they're coming back. To shake us up and to help us see through that greater lens and realize this wasn't just an event of bombs and guns and fire. This is an event on a soul level that involves the world. So yes, to help wake us up.
Leah writes a question. She says, I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I was pronounced clinically dead at the end of 2020 with multiple organ failures and was in a coma for 7 to 8 days. I've always been aware of the afterlife and have had some experiences on connections with past individuals. I don't recall anything from my experience. All I remember is being surrounded by heavy gray drapes. Why can I not recall anything else?
Not all of us recall everything in our near-death experiences. So that's not unusual. But I know you are finding that you are doing things differently and that you're behaving a little bit differently. I know that that's part of what's going on with you, and it will continue to go on with you. So understand that and know that. And again, get the book, A Manual for Developing Humans. That will help you a lot. And the after effects of near-death states, I talk about that in most of my books. You might get near-death experiences the rest of the story. That's a good one for you. Near-death experiences the rest of the story.
Porter writes, you have stated that you were astrally during 9/11 in New York and what you saw, but what were you actually doing to help beyond prayer while witnessing those transitions?
I was doing everything I could in the way of prayer and giving of myself. What more can anyone do? Through prayer and through giving of oneself, I did everything I could. Well, what more is there?
Kathleen wants to know if what has happened can lead up to a wake-up call for Russia.
That's not going to happen yet. It's not going to happen for a while. Maybe years away. I'm not sure what it's going to take for the Russian people. They're not allowed to wake up, because if they do, they're sent to jail. And they know that. They have to go along with Putin, or they're sent to jail. So I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I know it's going to take a while. I've seen broadcasts, as I'm sure all of the rest of you have, our reporters over there, interviewing people on the street, so to speak, and they're very much behind Putin. They absolutely believe that man, absolutely believe him. And those that don't are either leaving the country, and by the way, a lot of them are leaving the country, or they're going to jail.
Grace writes, from my perspective, whatever is happening in the Ukraine is a part of the spiritual warfare between the shadows and the light. All who are involved are there by soul's choice in this timeline cycle. Do you agree?
Yes, I certainly do. Yep.
Kathleen wants to know how we can help the souls that have been displaced.
Well, again, prayer is incredibly powerful. I mean, it is. It's just so powerful. And I offer that prayer and send that prayer as often as I can. Yes.
Sarah offers a link in the chat that you were discussing, but it sure looks like something worth seeing. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. You want to unmute?
We need to be ending pretty soon.
Yeah, the Walter Russell Museum discussion. This is a link to at least one discussion that PMH did, or one presentation at Walter Russell Museum. I don't know if she did more than one, but this is one of them, and it looked really good, the little tiny brief piece I saw of it.
I would recommend that. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to know about the various cycles that we're in and those to come, you want to get a hold of them and get a hold of that link to the talk I gave. There's also an extra part of that I think was by mail, that was not spoken but written. I think that's also part of the link. So you want the Walter Russell Museum. It's in Waynesboro, Virginia. But you can get that link from my website, or you can probably get it in general. Just a minute here. You could get it from operations at philosophy.org. So that's operations at philosophy.org. And that gets the Walter Russell Museum. And if you get disgusted with that, you can also call them on the phone. 1-800-882-5683. I'll repeat that. 1-800-882-5683. And tell them that you would like that link. You would like that link, and they would be happy to send it to you. By the way, the Walter Russell's pattern of near-death experiences is the most incredible I've ever found in my 44 years of work. He had a near-death experience every 7 years until he went into full enlightenment. So, I mean, if you ever see his paintings, you ever see his work, his books, it's just, wow. We don't have anybody to compare with him, Walter Russell. By the way, I did give a program on Walter Russell for IANDS at one time. So you could also get a hold of that program if you want to. But the Walter Russell Museum is just fantastic place if you ever have a chance to go there.
Thank you. I know you have need to go, but there's one question that someone's asked twice, and asking if you'd seen the documentary Changing of the Gods.
No, I have not.
Says it's a very similar experience to what your experience. You're talking about your experience.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it. Sorry. Sorry to disappoint you.
Have you ever, can you expand on your point of understanding Putin's actions? Someone else.
Well, you know, who can really explain Putin except that he wants to go down in history as the one who unifies Russia and brings it back to its greatness. That's his goal. That's what he wants. It doesn't matter to him how he has to do that or how he could do that. Doesn't matter. All that matters is the goal. He's a good Scorpio. Wake up, people who understand astrology. He's a good Scorpio. He's going to do this come hell or high water. So, yeah, you're not going to stop this man. He's going to keep on until other forces intervene. And if we can get enough munitions and firepower to the people of Ukraine, they could make things very difficult for Putin.
PMH, you've been so enlightening. Thank you so much for visiting us again.
It's been fun. I love you all. Love you, love you, love you.
We love you as well. So, and all of you, as you know,
You can what's the word? Subscribe to my free monthly newsletter. It's free, it's monthly, but it's only for the curious. So if you're not curious, you won't like it. But just get on my website, go over to newsletter. There is an archive there, so you can go through past issues if you want. But if you want to receive it, sign up. And there was an issue that just came out.
we will do that. Thank you. And if you all want to know that, go on to www.chicagoians.org. Our schedule of events is up there, and on the first page you can subscribe to our newsletter, which gives you the events and the links to all our meetings. And next month, the second Tuesday or Saturday of every month at 2 o'clock is our meetings. And next month we will again entertain Virginia Jablonski, and we hope to see you all there. So thank you so much for attending, everyone, and thank you again, PMH.
Hey, thank you. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.
All right.
Love all of you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.